Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Robert Francis Kennedy Jr. scores points with me, and I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready for that. He comes and says things that nobody else dares to say. So maybe that runs in the Kennedy family, and I hope he doesn't follow the Kennedy tradition, if you know what I mean. And he comes and says certain things that some of us talk about. I don't want to say no, that is true, because that would be, have a gut feeling that that's the way the things are conducted. And he is a candidate for the US presidency. And I don't know if he's going to make it, if he's going to be allowed. Saying more things like this, he will be called more and more a conspiracy theorist, crazy and extremist, and he will be out. So let's see. I hope he's not, because he might take people from let's say the right side of the spectrum, political spectrum, into his lap. Not only the 20% of the Democrats, but from the other side. It's going to be very interesting if he will be allowed to speak, and he is not going to be, dismissed from the very beginning, which I think the media already started doing that. So let's see what else he said. This comes from Sputnik today. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. reveals terrible truth about Ukraine-Pentagon, and I'm quoting, concealed from Americans. Now, he spoke with Jordan Peterson, which I like very, very much. And he said a few things about what's going on, what he thinks is going on. The former environmental lawyer and writer entered the race for the Democratic Party nomination for president in April, touting himself as a peace candidate who will talk with U.S. adversaries and fight against government overreach and the security state at home. Perfect so far. Recent opinion polls showed him enjoying between 12 and 19% support in his party. Democratic president candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has characterized the Russia-US proxy war in Ukraine as a abattoir. That is when you kill cattle and you prepare them for food. That has killed hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian troops for a geopolitical goal which has, and I'm quoting, nothing to do with Ukraine. End quote. And I'm quoting him while he was speaking to Canadian psychologist and media commentator Jordan Peterson. And more than that. He's more than that. And I'm quoting, what we're doing in Ukraine now is just a massive assault on Ukrainians. We have trapped Ukraine in a proxy war against Russia, and they are being devoured by the geopolitical machinations of neocons in the White House who have this comic book description that a lot of Americans have swallowed about what is happening, end quote. RFK Jr. said, speaking to Canadian psychologist and media commentator Jordan Peterson. Yay! So, nothing that he says here, I didn't say. And many like me, in different words. Explaining what separates his position on Ukraine from that of the incumbent Joe Biden, RFK Jr. said that although he understood many ordinary Americans' support for Ukraine out of, and I'm quoting, compassion, and as a humanitarian mission, in reality, and I'm quoting, every step we have taken, every decision we have made appears to have been intended to prolong the war and to increase the bloodshed. Now, I'm quoting again Kennedy. Zbigniew Brzezinski, I'm sorry. He was a former Secretary of State. Their doyen and philosopher said that U.S. strategy should be to suck Russia into a series of wars in little countries where we can then exhaust them. Lloyd Austin, who is President Biden's defense secretary in April 2022, said our purpose in being in Ukraine is to degrade the Russian army, to exhaust it and degrade its capacity to fight anywhere in the world. Well, that is the opposite of a humanitarian mission. I'm continuing to quote. That is a war of attrition, and that's what it turned out to be. We have now turned Ukraine into an abattoir that has devoured 350,000 young Ukrainians. He gave a number. I don't know where he got that number. They are lying about how many people have died. They are lying about how many people had died. They're concealing it from us. The Pentagon concealing it from the American people. Ukraine is concealing it from their people. We have turned that poor little nation into a killing field for these idealistic young kids in order to advance a geopolitical agenda that has nothing to do with Ukraine. End quote. RFK Jr. said, "You're gonna get yourself..." Alright, so the candidate also characterized the conflict as a, and I'm quoting, money laundering scheme, and I'm quoting, for the US military industrial complex. I've been talking about for a long time. That's always what it is. They make a lot of money from somewhere. The big arms manufacturer companies with our taxes through the Pentagon, and be scared of the Russians. Asked what he would do as president to bring the Ukrainian crisis to a close, as president, he said, RFK Jr. said, the resolution was, and I'm quoting, obvious, end quote, and that he would work to achieve it on day one, end quote. The Russians, and I'm quoting Kennedy, the Russians have wanted to settle this from the beginning, and they've been very clear about what they want. They want NATO to make a pledge to not come into Ukraine, which we should have done. Another pledge which we should have done. Oh yeah, if they didn't attack, I'm guessing. We shouldn't have put NATO into 14 countries in Eastern Europe. We told the Russians when they dismantled the Soviet Union in 1991 and they moved 400,000 troops out of East Germany and they allowed NATO to reunify Germany under NATO, and they said and I'm quoting, our condition for doing that is for this tremendous conciliation that we're making is that you never move NATO to the east. And George Bush told them, and I'm quoting, we will not move NATO 1 inch to the east. I don't know if Bush told them that, but anyway, it was someone else. It was Baker, I think, James Baker. But I don't know. And in 1997, Brzezinski laid out the plan, which is that we moved in not 1 inch, but 1,000 miles to the east. 14 nations, and then we put Aegis missile systems in Poland and Romania, which are nuclear capable. So they're a few minutes from Russia. They can decapitate the entire Russian leadership if we wanted to start a preemptive war. That is unexcusable, end quote. RFK Jr. said, you're gonna get yourself, you know what. Gorbachev was promised non-expansion of NATO. His mistake was to believe it, an US ex-official said. I read this article when it came on 31st of August, but it was too long with all the evidence over there to provide and make a video. It would have taken 45 minutes and I didn't want to do it. Not for me, I can speak hours. Okay, the candidate pointed out that Washington wouldn't let a foreign power do anything similar in the Western Hemisphere. What they say, that's justice, right? Recalling that his uncle, John F. Kennedy, didn't live with that during the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, when the USSR and the USA were brought to the brink of war over Soviet missiles in Cuba and US missiles in Turkey. Now, Kennedy Jr. also briefly delved into the roots of the Ukrainian crisis, recalling that Washington, and I'm quoting, overthrew the democratic government of Viktor Yanukovych in 2014, end quote, and spent $5 billion, I'm quoting again, CIA through US aid and the National Endowment for Democracy to violently overthrow that government, which was democratically elected. So we destroyed this democracy and put in our own government, which we now know the neocons in the White House, Victoria Nuland, selected 2 months before in a telephone call. We handpicked a new government before the coup. We put a new government in that immediately makes a civil war against the Russian population on Donbass. killing 14,000 of them, that bans the Russian language and then starts training with NATO, end quote. Oh my, as I keep saying, you're gonna get yourself... Now, Kennedy said he wasn't the only politician who feels this way about the Russia-US crisis, recalling that in late 1990s, George Kennan, the architect of the post-World War II US containment policy, called the decision to start NATO's eastward expansion an unprecedented calamity against a post-Cold War Russia seeking friendship with the West. Kennedy is running as a peace candidate in 2024. Kennedy's stance on foreign policy, plus his attacks against White House medical advisor Anthony Fauci and fierce criticism of mandatory coronavirus vaccinations, have led the mainstream media censorship and smear campaigns against his campaign. Yes, the Biden campaign has indicated that it will not hold primary debates against Kennedy and Marianne Williamson, the other Democrat who has thrown her hat into the 2024 race so far. Kennedy has criticized this no-debate policy as a grave mistake on Biden's part, saying it's not only undemocratic but would leave the incumbent vulnerable against his prospective Republican rivals, particularly former President Donald Trump. Yeah, he can't, man. You have to understand, it's not that they don't want. They know he can't. He can't. Electrolytes, remember? That's electrolytes, like in the Idiocracy movie. It's the electrolytes. It's Biden. You can't. I mean, I think that Biden is just helped to stay as he is for a very, very short period of time, and then he just lays down and again resting for the rest of, I would say, 23 hours and 45 minutes. He's resting for. I think that's how Biden's program runs. And anyway, if you don't see that, that's fine. Just see how he acts in that little time that we see him. And he reads those like Frankenstein, where am I? They've been taken away. Said, sleep now. Recover for the next session of 15 minutes that you have to come up and read those things. Make sure you read those things as they're intended to. Anyway, so this guy scores many points with me. He is more direct than even Trump, I think. And he's on the other side. These guys will kick him out of the Democratic Party pretty soon. They will do everything to, they smear you, they ridicule, they ignore you, and then, supposedly they join you. I don't think so. They have the power to make him join his family, if you know what I mean, sooner than later. Oh my God. But he's courageous. And I don't understand, I understand it, but I don't like this trend. When I see people close to death, let's say are 90-something, then they start telling the truth. Or then they come out and say certain things. Because if you harm them, they're like, I'm already gone. So I'm already past my bedtime. You know what I mean? Being 90-some. So like you see now, Mark Milley, the general, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that's been replaced with another capable guy because his qualities. He did not allow certain kind of dances to occur in the U.S. Army, and he stood by his decision. He said, I'm absolutely right for forbidding that. Now you say it because you're kicked out. I never lie. I mean, why didn't you say it last year? Why didn't you say it a year before? You remember when he came in front of the Senatorial Commission and you said, I can't remember which one, but it's on YouTube, well, he's I'm going to fight against angry white men like me. And what? Shut up. What are you talking about? That guilt that he was like, yes, and now he comes and turns around when he's kicked out. Too late, buddy, too late. So, good job, Kennedy, good job. I hope you stay with us longer. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.